Hello and welcome back to the Darth Magog channel. I'm your host, the Dark Lord of the Apostates, Darth Magog, and Happy Valentine's Day. I know it's a holiday whipped up by greeting card companies to shore up the New Year's slump in sales, but it also brings up a very important facet of life, especially for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses: romantic relationships. There were special struggles unique to the religion when it came to dating, and even as an ex-witness, a lot of the dating culture sticks around in your head. To compound the issue, if you're an ex-witness who met your special person or people later on in life, then they may struggle with your indoctrination too. Today we'll analyze what went wrong with dating culture in Jehovah's Witnesses and how a non-ExJW spouse can support their beloved ExJW spouse. We would be honored if you would join us. So, what is it about Jehovah's Witnesses that makes romantic relationships so complex? Well, we'll break it down simply. First, we'll review JW dating culture and how hearing about it affected your spouse's views on dating. Next, we'll visit the Jehovah's Witness view on sex, sexuality, and gender expression, or lack thereof, but we'll get to that. For those of you dating a current or former witness, we'll give you a baseline of what to expect. And finally, we won't leave you out to dry. Instead, we'll have some tips for your ex-JW spouse to get better at dating outside of the religion, or at least feel more comfortable. But I can't fly this ship alone. I'll need an extra set of new lightsabers for this one. Commander?
Yes, sir, Lord Magog.
Deploy Inferno Squadron.
Oh, I wasn't expecting special forces.
They have hope. We have Inferno Squad.
Hi everyone, I'm Rion, a former member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I consider myself to be a female who lands somewhere on the queer spectrum, and a lot of that is still kind of up in the air as I discover myself, but what I do know is I am happily married in a straight relationship.
Hola chulas! Thank you so much to Darth Magog for allowing me to help him with this video. And if you are new here, well then, hi, hello, my name is Natalya, and I am a 25-year-old gender, queer, bisexual person. I'm also an ex-JW content creator, and currently I am in a very straight passing relationship, but that's okay because I love him so much.
How's it going there?
It's going pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming on such short notice. I'm sure you guys were probably sieging Pennsylvania, I believe, because I know Rion was in the middle of a siege on Pennsylvania, helping the district attorney destroy some evil watchtower agents.
Laser focus, my friend. Laser focus.
But we figured since it's Valentine's Day, we'd call you guys in and we could talk about some very critical things, part of an ex-cult member's personal life, their dating life. So, yeah, I think we should definitely really get started on that. What do you guys think?
I think
Absolutely.
Growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, the goal of dating is limited to a singular objective, and that is marriage. The religion places a heavy emphasis on the concept of purity culture, which restricts the ability of young people to be able to explore their emotions, their interests, their desires, etc. So let's imagine that you're now 17, 18 years old. Here is what you're going to have to consider in order to be able to date. First, you have to be at an age where you're ready to get married. Because first and foremost, you need to be prepared to tie the knot within a reasonable time. That is just what is expected. Number 2, dating is only acceptable within the confines of the religion, making the pool of potential partners very limited and narrow. You're only going to have access to the people at your local kingdom hall, unless maybe you meet somebody traveling at a convention or at another kingdom hall, and you could maybe get lucky and date somebody from another kingdom hall that goes to your school. So there's that. Number 3, a chaperone must accompany dates. So every date that you go on when you are attempting to build an interpersonal relationship, you have to have a chaperone there who is of good standing. They need to be somebody trustworthy in the congregation who will be listening to each and every word. And you are not allowed to be left alone at all with them. So how can you build a good relationship with somebody when you have somebody else who's listening to your conversation? It's just not a good foundation. Number 4, we're encouraged to choose mates based on their standing within the congregation versus compatibility. And that means, are they active in service? Do they give talks? Do they have special privileges? If so, that's even better. But the hyper focus on religious standing over an interpersonal connection can result in marriages that are super unsatisfying and even lead to abuse, sexual dysfunction, and other mental and emotional issues. Assuming that just because somebody is the same religion as you, that you're going to have the same values, that they're going to treat you good, that they're going to care about you, that they'll be compassionate, that they'll be a good partner, is very naive. Are you even going to like this person in 5 years? Number 5, there will be no kissing, no petting, no physical activity of any kind. Without certainty, that is something that will get you shunned from the congregation. And basically, all these that I've listed come with repercussions if you don't follow the standards. And shunning is a huge consequence. And obviously, or not obviously, you can't have sex with others, and you definitely can't have sex with yourself. None of the sort. You cannot touch your own body. That is also a sin. And again, is something that you can get in trouble for. Oh man, it's bad. Basically, what it comes down to is the emphasis on purity culture can cause significant damage and give many people problems. I know personally, I've struggled with negative body image, guilt, shame, sexual repression, and those who don't conform to the standard, the societal norm of gender roles are going to face additional issues and pressures to try to conform to these archaic and draconian biblical standards. It's not healthy. It's absolutely not healthy. I'm 40 years old and here I am still trying to heal myself. And at this age, I'm well aware of exactly what has caused all these issues. I know exactly what it is. I'm educating myself now. So I know better. Unfortunately, I didn't understand as a kid. It really made me feel as though I should just attach myself. I was desperate to attach myself to the first person that would show any affection to me. I didn't know how to choose a mate. I didn't know what to look for. So I just encourage people that if they are even considering the Jehovah's Witnesses as a religion, that they do some serious research and critical thinking, because the pervasiveness of the culture has been passed down for generations from the governing body, from the top. And these men are so out of touch that it's frightening. They should not be in control and in charge of people's lives. It's all things that we should crucially and critically think about before considering becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses or even raising children inside of this organization. And again, I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking from experience. I say everything that I say with love and encouragement that you can, for yourself, figure out what works for you, what is right for you in your life, and make choices that will make you happy.
So does anyone have any JW dating stories? What was dating like for you guys inside the cult?
I was like very young when I was in the organization. I left pretty young. So I didn't really date in like the way that you would usually think, but I remember having a lot of male friends, and everyone would be like, "Oh, you like each other. You're gonna get married one day." And I'm like, "I am 12 years old. Please stop." It was kind of ridiculous, like how you can't even be friends with someone of the opposite sex without them like thinking more of it, that you're in love with each other or something. Like it's just really strange.
I have had some experiences, but I have not ever really been asked on an official date by a JW boy, but I have went out on what would be considered a group date, if you're familiar with group dates at all. So this is pretty common, or at least it was common in the Kingdom Halls that I attended, where a bunch of people would go out, like say maybe a group of, I'm trying to think, there'd probably be like 14-ish of us, like half a mix of boys, girls, 15-ish, maybe 14, somewhere in that age or years old, and it varies, but that's about the age group. And we would go to places like Pizza Hut. Is that dating myself? Well, you already know, but we would go to places like Pizza Hut and eat, and that would be like considered a group date, but there would be an adult present. Like it really isn't a date, because and it wouldn't be just one adult. There would usually be a few adults. It would be a rare occasion that we would be left in the hands of somebody that was considered adult age, but in good enough standards that they could watch over us honestly, like they couldn't be believed. But those excursions were fun, but there was no ability to really get to know somebody if you wanted to pursue them, because there's a bunch of other people around. You're not allowed to go off for a private conversation. Everybody's watching you, like watching your every move if they think there's some kind of connection between you and somebody else. So, yeah, that was kind of my experience. I didn't have the one-on-one. Well, you'd never have the one-on-one, but the one on the one person watching you date somebody else. So I never had that, thankfully, because I just think that would be, again, uncomfortable. Somebody in your business when you're trying to get to know somebody on a personal level. Yeah.
So my weird story about JW dating is how I actually got banned from it by my presiding overseer. It started on the day of my baptism. So I got baptized at 16. It was summer. It was 1,000,000 degrees out. We were in this desert town in the middle of nowhere. I had one friend there. Let's call her C. I'll just call her C. But yeah, no. So C was actually the only friend I had. She had even skipped a couple grades, but we're the same age. Just because she'd gone to a different school. So brilliant young woman. We had met in the same business class, and just always clicked. We were always on like the same level. And by the time I'd done my baptism, the first day, because my parents couldn't make it, there were some extraneous family circumstances. So we went with my study conductor, who was the coordinator of the body of elders. We called them presiding overseers back then, but that's who he was. He was a good friend of my parents from back home in our hometown. So he had taken us out, him and his wife, and then the first thing he said to me, as soon as I got out of the water, or actually I don't think it was even him, it was his wife. First thing he said, not congratulations, not welcome to the family, not, hey, there are so many big things for us to do now. It's, okay, who you got to stay away from now. And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, what? And it's yep, you're right, because she's just going to be looking for an eligible young man to marry, and it's going to be and she's going to be looking at you. I'm like, well, that's brilliant, but I don't think either of us are quite ready for that. We're good friends. I mean, I can see a future with us together, and I was thinking about it, and he's like, yeah, nope, that's not going to work because you're going to Bethel. And I'm like, well, hold up, we didn't talk about this, and that the vice grip of control really started beginning. So even before then. Even someone who, and keep in mind, she wasn't that association or anything. She was baptized. She was pioneering, so clearly she was in good standing.
Right.
Her parents knew me and everything too. So it was, so that was the first thing I remember. Like the last time I saw her was at a convention. She was like, it was like, I think right as I'd gotten appointed as a ministerial servant, and she gave me a hug. She's like, congratulations, and like, thank you. And, we just kind of sat there probably longer than we should have. And then I just didn't see her again after that.
I'm so sorry. I was gonna say that's so crazy because I feel like my perspective was that there were more girls than there were boys because I would see like a lot of competition between girls for like very certain boys. And maybe it's because they were like considered to be spiritual or just like, like you said, very eligible bachelor. But I always just saw like a lot of infighting between girls like trying to get to, this guy or like any guy. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that messed with me for a long time because it like taught me that like other girls are the enemy and I have to be better than all of them. And
Yes, an
that's so
internalized
unhealthy and
misogyny.
so wrong. That's like affected
So
me like
true.
for my
Gotta
whole
upbuild
life
other queens,
basically.
right? No, for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
I have
Yeah.
an experience with that. Not that I,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, so you're exactly right, Kai. The dating pool is very small. Of course, you're speaking of general, just your own congregation. You might get an opportunity to go speed date at a convention, but you are kind of looking at the other girls like, oh, that's my competition. And I'm so like, oh, I'm so upset with myself that I behaved this way. Really, truly, truly regretful. But I was so in love with this one boy for a long time. And a new girl came to the hall and we became friends. Like I best friends, actually. Best friends. And really to this day. But he chose her. And
Mhm.
I was extremely upset about it. I wasn't like mad at her, but I was jealous of her because I had liked him for so long and it was just like, oh, why didn't he pick me? Pick me. And
pick me,
and
girl.
but mm, one night he kissed me and
No.
yeah, right? Oh, but he was kissing more than just me and her, come to find out. So,
Oh.
you know, so that's why I kind of don't feel so guilty. But yeah, and you you don't have an opportunity to find somebody who truly gets you. Like I like this guy, but this guy didn't like me because he didn't get me. But I didn't have the opportunity to find the guy who got me, right? And I it bothers me so bad because I love her so much and I'm just so angry with myself that I behave that way. And it's taken so long for me to fix that jealous part of me and
Hmm.
realize I have nothing to be jealous. I love women.
Yeah.
Like I realize now
Yeah.
that I really do love women and if anything I want to see women succeed and I want the best for women. I would never want a woman to be with somebody who treated her bad. And
Right.
it was such a switch. And most of that switch came from just getting outside of the rhetoric at the
Hmm.
Kingdom Hall.
Darth asked me to go over some of the Jehovah's Witness views on sexuality and the LGBTQ community. The first place that our mind goes to is premarital sex, which is obviously having sex outside of the marriage arrangement. If we take a look at a September 2013 Watchtower article on premarital sex, we definitely get the understanding that to the Jehovah's Witnesses, all forms of sex outside of marriage are absolutely wrong. They're an uncleanness and God will judge all the fornicators. So right there, that is a fear. That's them inculcating fear into their members, giving them an incentive to not only be afraid of sexual activity, but to be afraid to have sexual desires, which are completely natural to the human experience for most people. And this, of course, goes beyond just regular, vaginal penetration, missionary style sex. You know what I'm talking about, okay? The witnesses actually have teachings and articles talking about how even two people who are married, even inside your marriage, you are not able to have oral sex or anal sex. Daddy. If we look at a different Watchtower article written in March of 1983, it goes into these bedroom laws, saying that oral and anal sex are forms of porneia, which are like fornication but slightly less. Like, it's not sex, but it's still uncleanness and loose conduct. I'm sure that this mentality most certainly leads to an unsatisfying sexual life, but also to an extreme amount of repression that will inevitably challenge you and your spouse further down the road in your marriage. But let's take a step back for a second and really think about what these bedroom laws mean. They mean that the organization is so entrenched in your life that they feel they have the authority to tell you how you can have sex with your spouse in your house, in your bedroom. It means that you have such little control of your own life that you are willing to accept this absolutely outrageous overstepping of boundaries. This leads me right into our next and final point. How do the Jehovah's Witnesses view homosexuality or the LGBTQ community? Well, obviously not everyone is able to have the good old vaginal penetration kind of sex. I mean, sometimes anal and oral sex are the only kinds of activities that you can even do with someone. And because Watchtower has these asinine beliefs, or has the audacity, honestly, to tell you that you are not allowed to engage in sexual activities is perfectly fine, practiced for centuries by so many other cultures, like, please. So of course we know that Watchtower is a traditional, conservative, heteronormative organization. And it's not really clear if they believe that people who are gay or trans are born that way, or if they're just like choosing to be perverted. I'm thinking that it leans more towards the latter. Gay, bad. Straight, good. And if you're anything but super straight, then you are bad too. So I was regularly made to read material that made me feel so ashamed and so guilty that I was attracted to feminine people who identify as female. I knew that I liked girls before I ever knew that I liked boys. But once I got older and I was hearing all of these stories and all these examples of people who had to overcome their sexuality, I just thought that it was another test that I was being given, another way that Satan was trying to pull me out of the truth. I didn't see people who were a different sexuality from me to be bad people. So why was I treating myself like a bad person if I wouldn't treat somebody else that way? Because to me, it wasn't that I was making this choice, it was that it was so overcoming to me, so overwhelming to me, that I knew that it had to be something inherent to me, an immutable characteristic, something that makes me who I am. And once I was able to realize that, it didn't matter what Watchtower thought about me or what anyone else thought about me.
Here's a question. So I think everybody here is at a bare minimum hetero-flexible.
That's a good way to put it.
That's a good way to put
Flexible.
it. All right, so that's a good way to put it. That being said, what was your guys' experience with homophobia in the religion? How did your congregation handle LGBTQ+?
Well, I love my father, but I know specifically that he was homophobic. I can't I can't say that he is now, because he has been very accepting of me and my family and how much we've grown and changed. So he was very rigid. He was very rigid when I was young. He would turn the channel if anybody gay came on the TV. We wouldn't watch movies if they had gay people. So he was very strict about it. I am thankful that he came around, and I'm guessing part of that is, because I'm so awesome and amazing and worthy. But So that I'm very, very thankful for. But yes, I was raised in a household that didn't think it was acceptable, thought it was a
Yeah.
sin, and it was absolutely talked about all the time at the Kingdom Hall
Hmm.
about how being gay is not God's way, and you won't make it through Armageddon.
Yeah, so I mean, my parents were the same, like, really repulsed by the idea of gay people existing. I don't think my mom necessarily, I don't think they like hate gay people or anything like that, but they're just like, I just don't think they understand it. And so you kind of are afraid or maybe uncomfortable with something that you don't understand. I have, I think I have a couple of gay cousins. And I remember it was always sort of like sus whenever they were around, like, oh, you can talk to them, but don't like talk to them, like don't have
Oh.
any connection with them, right? And so yeah, that's silly and hard, but myself, I was we had just moved to this new congregation because we like went to help, help where the need is great or whatever.
Oh, you were
And
need
I
greater.
didn't
Oh
know
no.
anyone. Right, I know. Oh my God, it was brutal. That's like, okay, that
Oh.
translates to you're gonna be the only kid there and you're not gonna have any friends.
Oh, no, I didn't
That's what
think about
that
it that
means.
way. Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But anyway, so we moved to this new congregation, and there actually was a girl there who was like a little bit older than me, but only by a couple years. And I was like, I clung onto her. I never left her side. She wanted to see me all the time, and like it was just one of the most like pure, beautiful relationships I've ever had. And I don't think I don't think I knew that I had feelings for her until a little bit later in my life. But at some point, I think we had like held hands one time. It's so funny. Like girls hold hands all the time, but I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, my heart is racing right now.
Oh.
That
And
was
I
adorable.
think
I love
after,
that.
yeah, it was so cute because we were like 12, 14, so it was just innocent. And I remember I was like so happy about it, and I loved her so much. But after that, she like sort of started like pulling away, like fading off, and I was like, "No, why are you, what's going on?" And I was
Hmm.
so devastated by it that I just felt like she didn't want to be friends with me anymore. But like looking back on that, like I grieved that the same way that I would have grieved someone like breaking up with me. And that's what it
Mhm.
felt like, was like she dumped me or she like didn't feel the same way, even though I had no concept of what that even was at the time.
Right.
But it was just like, oh my God, it kills me.
Aw.
We had a serious homophobia problem in that congregation, even for Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, so it was kind of a funny thing, like that. Any instance. I remember one brother. He actually he's the one I took the ministerial servant spot from because his
Oh.
son had left. No, he still liked me. Like we still got on and all that. So he didn't blame me for it or anything. He knew
Okay.
that he wasn't eligible for privileges because his son had left. And like just kind of walked away, just stopped coming to meetings. And his wife
And they
was
held
very
it against him.
inconsistent. They held it against
Yeah.
him. So yeah, and he knew it wasn't me because it had happened before I even came through. So it was before I even started
Oh.
attending the congregation. So he knew it wasn't me, and he'd even come to like on Bible studies with me. He was still a good friend to me, but he'd go out of his way anytime he heard about a worldly person that one of our congregation members was having trouble with. He'd always work his way into the conversation and be like, "Oh, it's that principal again. Is he the sissy boy?" He'd always look for it. That was
Like,
exactly how
come
he said it. That
on.
was a quote, and he'd even do the hand wave thing like he was,
Right.
Mel Brooks in, Robin Hood.
Oh god.
Right. Jeez.
Yeah, that's disturbing. Come
It,
on.
it very very much so. And the funny thing was, I had a classmate of mine, like he was a friend. Realistically, he was a friend because we'd actually like we'd sit down, we'd play the Yu-Gi-Oh together all the time. He was one of the few people I actually ended up getting along with in high school later on, and I went to school with that man for about 3 years, I didn't know he was gay, and he
Mm.
was. Looking back on it, it was very clear, but I didn't pick up on it.
Mhm.
And then I found out, I think probably about 3 months before he was set to graduate, and I was like, but but the agenda, no, what's on the agenda? You know what's on the agenda? You know what's on the agenda, XJW agents? Brunch. Tuesday is
That's it.
tacos, Sunday is brunch. That's it. There's
Nothing
no
more.
and that's when I discovered, yeah, there is no gay agenda. There was nothing, and it was one of the first cracks in the armor. I think it was right after that experience I had with not being able to hang out with my friend, who was a girl. But yeah, that was just another one of the cracks in the mask. That was JW Magog.
Yeah,
I hate that so much.
I know. I didn't realize like how much it affected me because I too had a gay friend at school that I didn't know was gay, and I don't even know if they knew they were gay, but
Mm.
I probably not probably, I know I said things like, um, I don't know that it's a sin or like it's okay, but God doesn't approve, like love
Mhm.
this sinner, hate the sin kind of spiel.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we're fine. We made it through, and I did eventually like apologize to her saying, if I ever said anything to you offensive when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I'm sorry. I did not know what I was doing. Please forgive me. But like all's
Right.
forgiven. But I know I had to say rude ass stuff to people I love simply because of what I was hearing in my home and what I was reading in literature.
What you're
It's just
indoctrinated to believe.
Yeah.
exactly. And it's now I'm thankful that switch was flipped and I realized like, no, this is all natural. They're the ones who are being like weird and super unnatural.
Right.
Getting back to our JW cultural analysis is what you can expect from your Jehovah's Witness spouse. Admittedly, it would be easier to list things that you shouldn't expect from them, but there are plenty of common threads in the doctrine, theology, and culture that will influence your spouse. They even have a term for it, the new personality, and this is what that new personality does. First off, your JW spouse will likely be very limited in their experience around dating. Not only are Jehovah's Witnesses not allowed traditional one-on-one dates, they're also in very controlled environments. Flirting is especially challenging for a former Jehovah's Witness, as the religion has redefined flirting to be a nasty word.
Now, what would you describe as flirting? Put simply, it's treating someone as if you're interested in marriage when you're really not.
If you manage to get past that, there's also bound to be hangups around sexuality and sex. Sexuality is at best heavily suppressed in the religion, and more commonly outright shamed. And that's even for heterosexual couples. The religion refuses to acknowledge anyone on or anything about the LGBTQ+ spectrum, so this becomes doubly problematic if your ExJW spouse identifies with that spectacular technicolor rainbow of love. Premarital sex is forbidden in the religion, which can lead to a number of problems. Sexual compatibility isn't something that's considered when dating in the JW religion, and while it's not the end-all be-all of relationships, many romantic relationships dive into this territory. To compound the problem of limited sexual experience with a partner, your JW partner will also have limited sexual experience with themselves too, so they may not understand what's pleasurable to you, but also might not understand what's pleasurable to them. A problem that can be solved with communication and patient exploration, but worth considering. This plays well into the next part of their experience, guilt. Sexuality and even romantic interest outside of a highly specific box is considered unethical and immoral to a Jehovah's Witness. So much so that thoughts are internally policed by members. Your JW spouse may have pangs of guilt for something as simple as being attracted to someone or having sexy thoughts. We on the outside know that this is a normal part of human sexuality, but you need to keep something in mind. Jehovah's Witnesses are repeatedly told this on a daily basis through their meetings, publications, and video presentations. It's like Clone Trooper Flash training, but instead of shooting simulated battle droids, you're just presented with scenarios of how to avoid sinning with Jehovah. It's pretty sad and therapy worthy. Of course, if your ExJW spouse has found ways to overcome these hang-ups, they may be a victim of other aspects of the religion. For one, they may have a small social circle, depending on how your ExJW spouse was raised. They typically avoided non-Jehovah's Witnesses outside of mandatory interactions, like school or work. And depending on how they left the religion, nearly all of their friends and family members may very well be Jehovah's Witnesses themselves. This will automatically shrink your spouse's social circle, as Jehovah's Witnesses don't associate with former members and often shun them on that basis. The religion also teaches that the only basis for friendship is belief in Jehovah, so your spouse may also struggle with making friends now that they're outside of the group. Don't be surprised if they're starting at zero when it comes to building a support network. All of these points will result in some extensive trauma off the bat. There are other aspects to Jehovah's Witness life that affect a person deeply. The religion has a widespread problem with CSA that's been going on for years, and it's possible that your spouse may have been a victim of that. The religion takes a cavalier approach to mental, emotional, and even physical abuse in marriages and families, as they traditionally see the abuses as less important than a marriage or family arrangements themselves, and as such, this is also a common thread in JW families. And even if they haven't experienced internal abuses, the external factors are real. Jehovah's Witnesses tend to be persecuted in some countries, like Russia, just for existing. Their small social circles and bizarre religious practices make them targets for bullies in school, and they're frequently exposed to verbal abuses and the mandatory door-to-door preaching work. Hobbies and recreation are heavily controlled, so most witnesses don't have an outlet for their frustrations, except for pouring more of their energy into the very religion that's traumatized them. An unfortunate fact that plagues many for years, even after escaping.
Should we talk about our non-JW spouses? Because I don't think any of us have JW
Sure.
spouses.
So I didn't learn till recently. I'm going to tell you something. I had an operation back in 2000, let's say 2017, okay? 2016. And I decided that I wanted to make sure I signed a waiver that said I don't want blood, if at all, I wanted to not get blood if at all possible.
Right.
And I went to, at that time, they had the the liaison committee. So I
Oh, the
went to
hospital liaisons, yeah.
yeah. So I went there and I got, all my paperwork. I got my bloodless medicine magnet, as you can see here. And yeah, I made my husband watch a video produced by the Jehovah's Witnesses about blood fractions. Now it just is all insane that they feel like they can take parts out of just like, you know what I'm trying to say. But my husband went along with it, because he loves me. And I found out recently, after all this came about and I kind of woke up, he was like, yeah, I thought you were a bit crazy, but I wanted to be supportive. And you would have gotten blood. Like, no way, no how, no question. Your ass was going to live and you would have gotten blood if it came to that. Obviously, it did not. But that's just how in I was and just how much he had no idea what me being in meant until I woke up just a few years ago. And now it's been easier to explain more things to him because it all really correlates to who I am as a person, right? All this different these different experiences and the things I've learned and the traumas, etc., as with anybody, are, it makes you who you are. And I love who I am, but there's like some quirky things that he's had to learn about me simply because it's just been ridiculous ideas that I've been inundated with as a child.
Because when he was growing up, he had a friend who was a Jehovah's Witness, and he saw like how he was treated by his family, and that kid like obviously shared what was happening in his life with him. And so he kind of already had an idea of some of the things that I had gone through, which is really helpful. Honestly, I just like that's like what 1 in a million chances that that could happen. So it was really nice for sure. I think he's been surprised by how corporate the religion is. Like I guess he didn't realize like, oh, they have branch committees and teaching committees and departments and public information. I don't think he realized like how like like how corporate it is. But other than that, he's really not that surprised by anything that I tell him. He also, I think because I've been out for a while, I've had a long time to figure out how to be in a relationship. And so by the time I got to him, I was already perfect.
I love it.
I was already dream girl. No, he's very lucky, but I am too, because like I said, I just don't know that that's ever going to happen to me again, that they already just know.
I don't think anyone knows who well, some people know who my spouse is. If you know, you know. So anyway, my spouse actually, it was kind of funny. They weren't so much, they had no idea that I had been a Jehovah's Witness. I remember I was watching some videos. I think it was mostly Telltale, and I want to say Lloyd Evans at the time. There were a couple other ones. I got into ExJW Critical Thinker, and I was watching those, and I was watching them. I was doing like kind of a dad thing where I was watching on my phone really loud with the sound up and kind of trying to drop the hints like, oh, why, honey, why are you so interested in that? There's a reason. Right. So I talked to them and I was like, yeah, I'm coming out to you. And like, yeah, I used to be a member of a high control group, a cult. And I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And they're like, didn't know that, but that makes so much sense now. They didn't know much about the religion. They did have a friend. Their friend, coincidentally, was gay, of course, and obviously that's not allowed in the religion. So that friend went to go live with my spouse's other friend, because that was the gay friend's boyfriend. Well, I guess they're both gay, obviously, but you know what I mean? Right. That's how that works. Yes, so they knew about the homophobia, they knew about the blood transfusion prohibition, and I think knew about World War II, they knew about purple triangles, and that was it. But having heard that, the first thing that they said to me was, oh, the black and white thinking, it makes so much sense now. The compartmentalization, it makes so much sense. Yeah. While you're so selective with your vulnerabilities, that makes so much sense. Like the selective information, I get it now. I get it all. It's all stuff I'm still working on. I think I've done a lot better, and from what I've heard from my spouse, I'm doing a lot better. Good. Yeah, they've definitely mentioned that. But it was, I guess that was the big surprise there.
I was gonna say, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had in relationships, and this is like romantic and platonic relationships that I do this in, but I'll meet somebody and I really like them and I feel like they really like me, and then maybe one day they're having a bad day and then I immediately think, oh, that's my fault. It's my fault that they're having a bad day because I did something wrong. I don't know what I did, but I did something wrong, and so I'll apologize. Like, oh my God, is it something I did? I'm so sorry. And then like it'll go from that to like, well, I don't want to be with you anyway. I don't want to have anything to do with you anyway. And then just kind of like come right back around. And it took me so long to figure out that I was doing that until someone pointed it out to me. They're like, do you realize that that's like not normal? I was like, no, obviously not.
I did not.
Right.
Feels like my default.
You went from like worried about stumbling someone, which is a thing, to the soft shun there. It's both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. They're both normalized so much in the Jehovah's Witness culture. Yeah, and that's just how we interact with everyone. We do the soft shun, like, oh, you're about association anyway, to the, oh no, did I stumble you? Was this me not showing Christian love? Same thing, and it's just built into us.
So I guess my biggest tip would be is, yeah, just building that open channel of communication. And I know that especially for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, talking about your feelings is really scary because sometimes they get used against you. But you should know that if your partner truly loves you, they're not going to use your feelings against you. So you should be able to grow to be vulnerable with them. And I can guarantee that that would mean so much to them. They would appreciate that so much that you are able to let them in. And I think that once you do have that communication, then you can come to someone when you are feeling like, oh my gosh, they don't love me. Oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. And you can bring that to them. Obviously, not put that burden on them, but allow them to come in and to help strengthen you and to help reassure you that that's not real and that you don't have to feel like that. But yeah, that's my greatest piece of advice. Other than that, just like treat people like they're human. That sounds so silly, but I think a lot of times we get this idea that like men are very different from women. You have to treat them very differently. And that's not really the case. You should just treat people case by case, like whoever they are, and not make so many assumptions based on who they present themselves to be. Like actually get to know them.
Right? Oh, I must have tons of advice. Don't pass away in surgery. Get a transfusion if you need it. That's life-saving advice. Absolutely what Kai said, communication, just with any relationship. So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
duh, but I've really learned that frick. I used to think that I was good at communicating. I had somehow, because of being a Jehovah's Witness, and I was programmed to talk to people like strangers, something told me that I was good at communication. And it really was not until I've woken up and realized that my communication is really lacking. And I'm talking about like the really deep personal stuff. I can obviously like have this kind of back and forth with people, but with somebody you love, you need to be able to go deep sometimes, and you need to be able to feel safe to do it. And I really didn't feel safe in the world, sadly enough, until I woke up. And as much as like the world is just a weird ass place, I feel way more safer being informed than being ill-informed and being ignorant. And I really have been able to, again, this is like pulling teeth for me, but I've been able to talk myself into communicating with my husband when I normally wouldn't. And I'm starting to like love it. Like I'm starting to love the fact that I have, do not cry. I'm starting to love the fact that I have somebody that I can trust and is not going to, like Kai said, turn my feelings on me, twist them like narcissists would do, because it's happened before. When you're Jehovah Witness, it's kind of normal to, well, why are you crying? You have no reason to be upset. We have everlasting life. There's always just this dismissing of feelings and emotions. And I don't mean to continue to go on, but truly being able to communicate from my heart without that fear, putting down the walls, has really been good therapy for me. And it's helped my husband to understand me so much better, because now he really knows the stuff that we were put through in a high control religion, right? And it's not just written on our faces. Like, you just don't know. You'd have no idea unless I told you. So I had to tell him. I had to tell him so he could understand. And if you're not in a relationship where you have that ability to be your true self, I'm sorry, and I hope that one day you get there. But that, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is having somebody you can really get down to the heart to heart and to the meat of things and trust. And yet you're going to have like arguments. Nothing's perfect, but always keep respect. Just keep that respect. Don't do like the name calling and stuff like that if you can help it. Like, sometimes you say asshole, whatever, like that's cool. But you know what I'm saying? Like those nasty, like trying to hurt people's feelings kind of stuff.
Well, I definitely have to agree with you guys on the communication. That was my first piece there, and then the mutual respect. That's a very critical thing. I'd probably say if I had any other advice, it's the way you look for your spouse. I know in the religion we're always looking for someone. They'd say the threefold cord. You got to make sure you have Jehovah in there. He's going to be the one to make sure. So you got to make sure that they're spiritual first, and you work everything else out later. No, that's not how it works in the real world, and that's not how you get yourself a lasting marriage. There are three things that I found in my relationship. So in my experience with a successful marriage, I found three things really did it. It's mutual interests. So you guys have to be able to do something, even, as friends. You don't have to be like, hey, best bro, let's go do this. But you have to be able to do things as friends. So it's mutual interests. Mutual values, because you guys are going to be building a life together. You want to make sure that you guys are on the same side with things. It doesn't have to be little things like who's your favorite football team. You don't have to have the same favorite football team. But when it comes down to how should we treat gay people, or what do we think of the gender spectrum, you should match up on those things. That's a pretty clear and apparent one. So the big things, you should have mutual values on. Little things, it's not the end of the world if they're a big Office fan and you just can't stay at Steve Carell. That's not the end of the galaxy.
Who says?
Right. And then the third and final thing, this seems to be this, I think this is the smallest, but it's also a critical part of it. Mutual attraction. You guys have to like each other. You have to be into each other. Like you gotta like what you're looking at. They don't have to be it doesn't have to be like a Brangelina thing. It doesn't have, you don't have to have Zendaya and Tom Holland or whatever. But you guys have to like how each other looks. Apparently, my relationship quite likes how I look under the armor over here. Don't know why. I prefer to be with the armor, but that's what they like, and I definitely very much like what they look like. So that's very critical. It's really big. So mutual attraction, mutual values, mutual interests. That's the threefold cord that's going to keep you guys together, at least from the Darth Magog playbook.
That mutual interest thing is absolutely critical, honestly. Like my boyfriend's super into wrestling, and I never expected to be into wrestling, but now I'm like, I know who that guy is. I know who that is.
That's
and
awesome.
We watch the matches. It's so fun.
Nice.
Like that, and in those times, like, yes, he is my boyfriend and I'm in love with him, but he's also my best friend. And I'm just hanging out with my best friend. And it's so cool that we get to be together.
I think that's nice that you can do, you can do the lovey things, but you can also just do the pally things. I think a good balance of that is how you can be a good pair, because sometimes, life gets really tough and there's a lot of bill paying and not fun things that go along with it. And if you're only having like hardship after hardship and you're not breaking it up with like the bonding, like I think you lose something. You got to make sure you're keeping that friendship, because you're in it together and you don't ever want to feel like you're against each other. You just want to be rowing the boat side by side, or however the hell you row the damn boat.
That's what everybody I'm on. Yeah, 100% with that. I mean, we build PCs together. That's a big project that we had this last year, is building the gaming PCs so we could game together. We've watched, we make it a ritual to sit down and watch every single one of the Star Wars shows every Wednesday when they come out. So we've seen, obviously we've done Book of Boba Fett, Bad Batch, Mandalorian. We even debate little silly Star Wars versus battles, like who would win the fight with this. And it's a fun thing that we just like to do. It's silly things like that. Like, hey, could Gandalf take Yoda? We don't know. What's the upper limit for Gandalf? And we'll actually do the math. But it's a fun thing for us to just do together. So we actually do, and these are things I'll do with my platonic friends too. So it really works out just to have someone, and we'll even get on the Discord. Like if I'm out gaming with the guys and all of that, then they'll jump on the Discord too. Even when they're not gaming, they will just sit there reading sometimes, or other times talking about work. Just depends on what's going on today, and it's nice. It really is nice. It's just great to have.
Thank you to both Kai and Ryan for joining us in today's video presentation. You'll find the links to their social media accounts in the description box down below. If you have any ExJW relationship advice, we'd love to read it in the comments section as well. Remember, ExJW agents, the elders may be watching you, but Darth Magog is watching the Watchtower.